Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I've got an amazing video for you guys today. In the country of Iran, there is some incredible erosion. Two features right next to each other that give us massive insight on our erosional past. But before we dive into these two features here and examine many erosional features within them in great detail, we first need to study some basic fluid dynamics. I took this video of a river and we can see two main features. Of course, we're all familiar with ripples, which form perpendicular to the flow of the current. Feature number two is called drumlins, and they form in lines parallel with the current and is due to the physical principle called laminar flow. Now, sometimes these two features form right on top of each other, and sometimes they form right next to each other. For our example in Iran, they form right next to each other. We've got desert sand with massive ripples on one side, and then we've got erosional sandstone features with the laminar flow erosion and many streamlined pieces of the sandstone. Now, first, let's just go to a topographical map and look at it from a topographical map, and we can see the erosion here. And when we look at the ripple patterns, we see that these ripples are quite large and have quite decent amplitude. The amplitude is the height, the difference in vertical height between the crest and the trough. So these are very tall ripples. But what's most amazing and what makes it most clearly water erosion is the edges of this sand deposit. So if we look at this deposit here, all around the perimeter is a nice accretion ridge. This is from water washing across here. And when the water ran across this deposit, it pushed up a berm called an accretion ridge, and it washed away any sand that would be over here. So this entire sand deposit is very consistent with fluvial action. And of course, wind is not going to be able to erode sandstone in such a strong and precise way as water is. So now we're going to really dive into the details, and let's just take it from the top here. We're going to cover all of this. We're going to change our direction, and we can see how this is all really channelized. And where are these mounds? Oh yeah, I didn't even see that before. And so we get mounds all over the place in here, which of course, if you are familiar with my channel at all, you will know that mounds are a strictly fluvial feature. And you would also know that I love mounds. Hashtag Mound Monday. Okay, so it's got a lot of mounds. And when we look at this streamlined sandstone, we can infer current direction based upon how the sandstone is streamlined. For example, here we can see that this edge is more rounded and this is more pointed. That would make this the tail and this the front. We could go to something like this, a feature like this. We can see a big rounded feature here. And so when you look for the more pointed tail, that's probably the easiest way to infer current direction, is to identify the pointed tail, like this, for example, here, pointed tail. And then this is the more rounded front. And then this is actually a good one here, right? This is a very typical pointed tail there. And we can see a transition from these smaller streamlined sandstones, and then it goes right into the much larger streamlined sandstones. Wind isn't going to be able to streamline a rock like this, even though it's blowing sand. It's just not that powerful and doesn't like to focus its energy that much. Let's check out this spot over here. And then what is these are horizontal forms, which of course are ripples. So we've got laminar and horizontal ripples, both in the same landscape. So you guys know what that means. So look at this here. This is a path of ripples here with no other ripples around it. That indicates that it's not windblown sand, because windblown sand would cover the whole area. But ripples can be very specific to certain terrain changes, wavelength 162 meters. So we've got indications of ripple paths of quite substantial magnitude all throughout here. Also wind simply can't make that large of ripples. It just doesn't happen. And then so this is a cool spot here because we've got ripples here, and then when we zoom in, there's ripples on the ripples. That's the beauty of the multi-scale feature of fluid dynamics. So let's check the wavelength on this. 340. Okay. And then we can go over here. Now this spot right here is too cool. We've got the laminar flow drumlins with ripples on the backs of the drumlins. This is just so detailed. And it's amazing how well preserved it is. It's just phenomenal. It's absolute art. And then so when we go in between these, there's paths of ripples. We can find some good ones over here. Right, so these are ripples here, and they're pushed too. Pushed sediment here. If you look at this, you've got drumlins again with ripples. You can see that they have their drumlin paths, all extremely consistent with a massive water current. This is actually something you can find after large tidal changes. For example, in Iceland, you can find something like this. So it's just amazing. Yeah, this landscape is just too cool. It's got it all. And oh, look at this. Oh man. It's simply too good. And then they go right around this streamlined feature on either side. You can see the tail. That's super cool. Let's check out this spot here. Some ripples in this valley here. You can see that these are ripples there. Let's check out this spot. Yep, just absolutely insane detail. The way it flows around this feature here is absolutely incredible. So let's go to this spot here, see what we got here. Oh yeah, really good example of some ripples in between these. And when you see ripples like this, these are streamlined ripples. This is something you can see in a water current every day of the week, for as long as the river's clean and is at the right depth and speed. So let's do a little crest to crest wavelength check, 65 meters. Very, very substantial stuff. Ooh, I like this path here, right along the edge. And then you got the way smaller ripples in there. That's the multi-size scale effect of the water current. Oh, this is another good one. Another good path of ripples right here. One of the best landscapes in the world to study some catastrophic erosion. Deserts are always the best place because they preserve the features so well. Here we've got some more ripples. Let's see what size these are. 61. So there's ripples of all sizes in this landscape. And then this, okay, let's reorientate ourselves this way. So the water, from based upon the streamlined shapes of the sandstone, the water flowed down this way. And then we can see, based upon this sand here, the water went this way and it curved and went down this direction. So let's take a little zoom in. And we can see that these are drumlins from laminar flow. And they came across this way. And you can even see that the sand is pointed on one end and pushed forward. The pointed end was pushed forward. So right here, this is a good way to see it. So the water current's coming down this direction, starts to turn right here, and then goes down this way. And you can see this is the pointed end. Let's check out this spot here. Paths of ripples. Oh, this is actually a cool feature here. So this was all dug out and scoured out by water, of course. And people think, oh, only water goes downhill. Yeah, it's not that simple at all. If water has enough inertia, it will go uphill. A body in motion tends to stay in motion. So even though this is uphill, the water still pushed sand uphill and pushed these ripples uphill. And I've even observed ripple formation very strikingly similar to this. Okay, so now we're going to check out this little sand dune patch here. And let's start off with this guy here. This is a good spot to start off with. What are these lines here? Are they lakeshore lines? Not exactly. They're accretion ridges. There's a difference between a lakeshore line and an accretion ridge. An accretion ridge is made by a current, and you can tell that it's made by a current by the way it wraps around. You see how they separate from one another and they wrap around, and they are not consistent like a lakeshore line is consistent. A lakeshore line has a consistent elevation all the way across, while an accretion ridge made by a current isn't so clean. It's a little bit more energetic. Because it's more energetic, it gets a little bit more complicated. That's why they diverge from one another and they can overlap, and then you can even see kind of a swirl right there. And then a big divergence here. And then you can find some ripples there. Okay, so this is just a beautiful spot. Look at that scour. Okay, let's check out this spot over here. Yeah, so this is an accretion ridge there. Okay, let's go to this guy here. Nice little circular scour. Yeah, these are some cool accretion ridges here. You can tell that it was very energetic the way it wraps around. And this is even high up above the salt pan, so it was quite energetic. It wasn't just a lakeshore line. And then over here we got some more wrapping accretion ridges. Now we're getting over to the large ripples here. And let's see what's going on there. Oh, perfect. Check out this wrapping ripple formation. This is very consistent with the edge of a bank. So let's get a wavelength on these ripples. Let's do from here to here, 71 meters. So we're dealing with very large ripples that are clearly fluvial. So that's giving us a current going down this way. And of course, there are these ripples here that also prove the same thing, which have a wavelength, looks a lot larger. What is that, 170? And then on top of it are more ripples. So it's just ripples on ripples. Ooh, nice ripples all throughout here. Fantastic location. But are these also ripples too? Well, I definitely entertain the idea. Let's do a wavelength check, crest to crest. 3.5 kilometers is pretty insane. At the same time this laminar flow was carving out these rock drumlins here, I think it's very possible that the same current was going down this way to make these ripples as well, just like what we first thought from our fluid dynamic example in the river. And then we can see that this way there's also more evidence of a current washing across this way as these drumlins line up with that direction as well. But I still think that was much smaller of a current because these drumlins here are so much smaller than the rock drumlins. But let's look at this right here. So we've got a water current washing this way, and the current ran right along this berm here. And that's why this is such a clean and distinct edge of the sand dunes, just like this is over here. Look at how distinct this edge is as well. And the distinction between the sand dunes here and this deposit is very strong. And we already saw this on the topographical map. That very strong edge here and this strong edge here is very consistent with water washing across it. And you can see on this sandbar here, it's got the same feature where it's got a nice distinct edge to it on the far side. That was when the river height was much larger and the water flowed on both sides of the deposit. So thanks for watching and stay tuned for more stuff. And I appreciate you guys' support. Have a good day.